If you guys haven't heard by now, yeah, this is the Nick Frazier Podcast, and you're getting the best genuine content out there. Right, fellas?
Sure.
Agreed.
Welcome back, everybody, to another episode of the Nick Frazier Podcast. As it says in the title, I'm your host, Nick Frazier. I have on a guest today, Scott Meyer.
Meyer.
Okay,
Meyer.
perfect.
Urban Meyer.
Yeah, exactly. There you go.
There you go.
Yeah, Scott and I crossed paths at a radio station we used to work at, and he has a background in football, playing at a high prestige in college, and still working at it to be in the pros. And so I wanted to have on Scott today as a guest. Scott, how we doing?
I'm doing great. How are you?
We're living, dog.
That's good.
Heart's pumping some blood, and we're living.
That's good.
For people that are probably watching, they're just thinking, "What's this? Black stuff on my forehead?" It's Ash Wednesday, so I got my ashes. But yeah, just wanted to put that out there because people probably weren't like, "What is this guy like? Just rubbing stuff on him?" Nah, I went to church and did some stuff. Okay, but that's not what we're talking about in this podcast. Talking about Scott and his journey with football and just his continuous journey. Let's put it that way: his continuous journey with football. And he's a cool dude. He's a cool guest to have on, and it's kind of why I wanted to invite you over, man.
Well, thank you for inviting me.
You're welcome. Well, first thing on the agenda is obviously you play football and you're a long snapper, and just kind of tell me how the process got for you to go from maybe middle school, high school, whatever, and to now to where you're at now. Like what kind of wanted you to play that long snapper position? Was it a natural thing or just more of like?
So the full story?
You don't have to say the full story, but like.
No, so I played football growing up.
Okay.
Started in second grade. Played all the way till into college, but elementary, middle school, never was a long snapper. I played center, but that was about it. Center and then defensive line. And then going into, let's say, spring of 8th grade year, I dropped a lot of weight. I dropped probably like 30 pounds.
Really?
As an 8th grader. Yeah, I got down to like 170. So I wasn't like as big anymore as like the other linemen. So
how tall were you at the time? I mean,
I was probably about 5'11".
Okay,
6 foot around there.
It was a healthy length.
Yeah.
Okay, cool.
So but going into freshman year, I broke my foot when I was on vacation, and so I had to miss a lot of summer workouts and miss the first beginning of fall practice.
Yeah.
And so, but I expressed interest to the coach earlier when I was in 8th grade. That like the head varsity coach when I first met him, that I was interested in long snapping. Mm-hmm. Always. My dad told me when I was little that's the best way to go to the NFL. So
yeah.
And at the time there was a senior who was a long snapper. His name was Tucker Etheridge, and so he's like, "Great, Tucker will teach you." And so I was just hanging out on the sideline one day during the fall when my foot was in a cast, and I just asked him if he'll teach me, and he did. So, and he went to Louisiana Tech on a full scholarship. So, and he kind of introduced me to all the camps to go to and everything. So,
interesting.
Yeah, he really got me started with it, and then just took off from there.
So, when you were in grade school and going into high school, you mentioned you played defensive line as well and stuff. Did you have any other preferred position besides the ones that you played? Like, did you have a favorite?
I mean, I like defensive line, I guess, the best, just because, like, playing center, it was great to touch the ball, but there's so much pressure as far as like just the shotgun snaps, and then getting off to block. And then in 7th grade, I played up with the 8th graders, and then in elementary school, I always played up too for most of it. And so it was the kids were like sometimes bigger and stronger and stuff, so it was kind of tougher to deal with, but still did really well with it. And so that's kind of why. So I knew the varsity coach in my high school when I was in elementary school.
Okay.
Because he was at that school, but for that varsity team. Mm-hmm. And so he kind of like invited me and a couple other kids to come over to the school. And so we went there to go play football. And when I got there, I was, really light. So
had to hit the weight room a little bit.
Yeah.
A couple nights at Waffle House.
Yeah.
There you
go. But yeah.
Cool deal, man. Well, cool. I'm glad to have you on the podcast. Glad we're talking a little bit about your story. But also, when you mentioned a little bit about the camps just now, what was that like? How was that process like? Because, people don't really realize that long snapping is still a recruited position for the most part. Like, how do people go about that? Is it like, a certain time? Like, what goes with it?
So probably I'd say probably about 95 to 96% of the specialists that you see in college, they all went to camps.
Okay.
There's very little, unless they just, like it was a tight end that converted to snapper in college, and even a lot of them also went to camps. But, yeah, long snapping camps and kicking camps, punting camps, those were kind of the way to go. That's how you get your film. That's how you get recruited. That's how you compete and try to get ranked to the top. Whatever.
Okay.
So, and that's how, when like a college special teams coach needs somebody, a lot of the times they'll call those people that run those camps.
Really? And they just kind of get their word of mouth for it?
Yeah. So, because like high school film's so skewed because you could have no competition or you could have the hardest competition.
That's true.
So your film, although it is important to see how you do, it's not the most important thing. I feel like as a specialist. Yeah,
it's better to see it in person type thing, or you get a trustworthy person that is good at eye for talent. You know what I mean? Yeah.
I mean, I'll give you an example. Like Eddie Pinheiro, kicker in the NFL, was with the Panthers last year. He played junior college soccer. Never played down to football until he got to Florida.
Really?
And he picked a scholarship to Florida over a scholarship to Alabama. He was committed there and then decommitted. And a couple others, I want to say like Georgia. And there's stories like that all over the place about kickers and punters where they never played it down to football.
Wow. Mm-hmm. So the next thing I want to ask you is, like, with all these camps and all these people that, go along with the ride of it all, is it like a tight community, like a lot of kickers and punters around the nation that are like high school recruits? Do they like all know each other for the most part?
Oh, yeah, for
really?
Sure. Yeah. Dude, when I was in college, I probably knew at least one specialist on every Power 5 team, but probably even a majority of just the FBS teams overall.
Really?
Yeah, because it's just like you get to know the same people and you see them a few times a year and you end up talking. And, like when we were in high school, we had this camp in like Las Vegas. And so you're like 16, what are you going to do in Las Vegas? So like you meet friends and you just like go eat with them, go hang out with them. So
that's cool.
Mm-hmm.
What was Vegas like? I mean, obviously you weren't in Vegas.
It was cool. I mean, the lights are always cool when you're, in high school and stuff, and it's fun to walk the strip, but that's about all you do.
You've been back there ever since then?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah, a few times.
I always want to go to Vegas. I don't know why. My parents went one time for some sort of like trip or whatever, and they ended up going to like a giant dune buggy, and they just going in the sand dunes.
Oh, yeah, like the desert out there is pretty cool. I've wanted to go hiking out there for the longest time, but I just haven't done it yet.
Yeah, hiking would be fun to do. Obviously, Tennessee's a good place to go hike, You
yeah.
Go to look out
mountains. Oh, yeah, for sure.
I went ziplining one time up in Chattanooga.
Oh, really?
It was one of the coolest experiences of my life.
Yeah.
I've never done ziplining. I was freaking out, like, what's going on? But, like, just
going down
cool.
it. Yeah. That's funny.
But, back to football, sorry. You're going through high school. You're starting to get recruited, starting to go to camps. Mm-hmm. Your name's getting out there. What was the first coach that kind of offered you a scholarship, or just, like, what was the first person that kind of noticed you?
So I started talking to schools probably my sophomore year.
Okay.
Going to those, they have their college camps, and then that leads to some, and that leads to interest, and then colleges you don't go to start talking to you. First offer was probably West Point.
Okay.
It was like August. I remember the day. It was August 1st of going into my senior year, so 2015.
Okay.
And then Air Force offered that same week. And then I had a few more like Division I AA scholarships, and then just a few preferred walk-ons after that. So, but it all happened between August and the end of January.
Interesting.
So, but mainly it was really like the month of January.
Okay. You didn't have any like last-minute offers like on signing day or anything?
No. No. The closest thing I had, you know what? Actually, I did. I had somebody call me. A D1 AA school. Portland State called me and like I want to say like 10 other guys.
Really?
And because they needed somebody, and so they're like, you have like 24 hours. And I was like, well, thank you very much. It was like the week before signing day. It was something like that. It was something crazy. I was like in a parking lot at like this Chinese place I was eating at. And I was like, thank you. It was yeah.
Kind of made my mind up already.
Yeah, that was weird. There was another one that was kind of last minute where it was the week of the state championship, and I had to go snap. So I thought he had already offered me.
Mm-hmm.
And so it was the week of our state championship. It was like a Sunday. And I had to go meet him at the Atlanta airport and snap for him in the parking lot of like the top level of the parking deck.
Seriously?
And then I had never snapped that good. And he comes up to like me and my dad. He's like, we want to offer you. And I was like, I thought we were already offered.
Wait, what school is this?
It was Southeast Missouri State.
Really?
It was a D1 AA school too. So, but that was like kind of last minute because I think I had an official visit there like a couple weeks later.
Okay.
So, yeah.
That's probably one of the weirdest, I guess, odd stories I think I've ever heard for like to be recruited. Wow, in a parking lot or parking garage.
Yeah, I had to go meet him at the top level parking lot, and the guy I snapped to was the assistant coach for the team we were playing against because that was like one of his best friends.
That just sounds like some high school style recruiting right there.
I guess he was like connecting flights or something. I don't know because Atlanta's like a hub for that.
Right.
And so, yeah.
That's hilarious.
Yeah.
So on signing day, was it a memorable moment for you? Was you like, oh, it's just another step in my career? Like, I'm just going to sign somewhere, enjoy it, and go? Or?
Yeah, no, it was pretty memorable. I remember school started at 7:45, and I think the signing started at like 7:30.
Mm-hmm.
And so I signed, was late to class, and it was a science class. And the teacher, I walked in with like my so I went to Catholic high school, and so we had to like wear shirt and ties that time of year.
Right there with
and
you.
I like walked in with my hat and like a pullover, and she's like, and I was like, yeah, I was like, it's signing day, and she's like, oh, okay,
makes sense.
She just had no idea.
Really?
Yeah, and so. And then we got out of school early to go down to downtown Atlanta to do some stuff, some interviews. So it was like a pretty cool day for like all of us involved.
Yeah, That's pretty neat. You just have to sign a couple autographs, maybe
No.
sign a few baby heads, right?
No, nothing like that. But yeah.
Oh my god! So you ended up signing with who?
Oh, with Alabama.
Yeah, I knew that. I was just kind of insinuating
yeah.
a little bit. So what kind of led to that? You're just like Alabama, like prestige, or was it just like, oh man, Alabama, the best team in the nation? Why not?
Yeah.
You know?
Well, like the goal, I guess, when I started long snapping was to always play Division I football, like at the highest level I could. So I went on the visit the week before. No, like maybe about the week before. Signing day, and I was just like, this is kind of where I want to be.
It just felt like home to you.
Yeah, so a few days before signing day, I called the coach up and told him I wanted to go there, and he was just like, great. Sent me their like training manual to follow, and that was just about it. And then went back a couple more times that spring, so it was a good time.
That's pretty cool. So were you like, when you got the letter in the mail, like, oh, Alabama's interested in me, were you just like, damn, like I must be good?
No, it wasn't like that. It was, so I had gone to the camp before, like 2 years prior, and then I sent an email to the coach in like that summer or maybe like early that fall, and he responded to me at the beginning of December and was like, I'll reach back out to you after our season. And so then I got another email from him asking me to come on a visit.
Yeah.
And so that's kind of just how it happened.
That's pretty cool.
Mm-hmm.
Wow. So when you got there at Alabama, you know, you're trying to get adjusted with team chemistry. You're trying to get adjusted with, you know, like you said, the pamphlet they gave you for training and such. Was it pretty difficult, like, for that type of pamphlet they gave you to follow the training regimen, or no?
I mean, it's pretty detailed, so no. It's the same thing they had been handing out for
years on end.
2007, so like 9 years prior. So same thing everybody follows, and it kind of just has some workouts by the week, how you can fill it in. It had some nutritional facts, a lot of facts.
Yeah.
To kind of help you on your way. So
interesting. I assume that must be the recipe for Alabama's success. They have a different regimen than everybody else, huh?
It's been the same thing that he's been doing since probably he was at like Michigan State.
Yeah.
In like the early 90s. So But they recently probably just changed it up.
Yeah. Wow, that's pretty cool. So when you were at Alabama, you take me through a day in the life of an Alabama football athlete. Like, you got the awesome place to go work out in, a great facility, great dining hall, like top of the line stuff. Take me a little through it. Just
so like in season, we would on Mondays and Thursdays we'd have to so let's say it was a Monday, we had a lift at like 6 or 6:30. There were other workouts like 8:30 and then 10:45.
Okay.
That you could go to if you didn't have class, but always had class, and then eat breakfast, go to class after. Sometimes class would be 2 hours. Sometimes you have it for 5. Always get done with class before 2, and then meeting started at 2, and then practice started around 3:50, and then it would go to like 6:30, and then after that you would go to study hall or to tutor or just do your homework. Sometimes it was mandatory, sometimes it wasn't. It just depended on your academic standing and how old you were. So
right. Interesting. Yeah, no, I always thought it was kind of like, man, maybe Alabama just has football at least 12 hours of the day, and then maybe throw in studies in the end of the day, whatever.
Yeah.
Wow, that's pretty in detail right there.
It was every day.
Holy cow. So who are your, I guess, best go-to guys on the team? Like, were they just people in your position group or other position groups or what?
Yeah, guys in my position group, and then some of my best friends weren't in my position group.
Okay.
So
cool.
Just guys I really came in with that same class. So
interesting.
Mm-hmm.
So like being in Alabama, there's obviously this clout factor. You have some big name players that are probably going to the NFL like after their sophomore, junior season. Did that ever kind of cross your mind of like, man, these guys are going to be gone in the next couple of years? Is this team going to withstand like, the next?
Not really. Not really. I remember one time we had this speaker come in and he talked to the team and he was like, only 5% of you and there's like 100 guys in there.
Yeah.
And he's like, there's maybe 5 or 6% of you at most will go to the NFL one day. And everybody laughed.
Really?
And he's like, okay, maybe like 9 or 10%. And it ended up being, I think that 2018 team had like 40-something, 50-something guys go to the NFL.
2018. Was that the year they played Georgia?
That was the year after when they played against Trevor Lawrence.
Okay. First year of Clemson.
But everybody laughed because that 2018 team had Jalen, Tua, Mac Jones, Najee, Josh Jacobs.
Yes.
Damian Harris was still there. Bill Scarborough might have left.
Jerry Jeudy,
Ruggs, Devontae Smith, Calvin Ridley might have left, might have still been there. But then Jalen Waddle was in there.
Yep.
So, the whole starting offensive line, everybody.
Yeah. Basically above 5%.
Yeah. So, it was 60% or something like that.
That's hilarious. It's funny because if you look at the grand scheme of it all in college football, it's probably 5%.
Mm-hmm.
But out of that 5%, if you look at Alabama, they are the whole 5%, if that makes sense. You know what I mean?
Yeah, there's a lot of them. That's for sure.
My gosh. So, playing on the road, playing at home in Tuscaloosa, what's the atmosphere like? I've never been to Tuscaloosa. I've never got to experience a game day. What is a game day like at Alabama?
As a fan?
No, as a player.
As a player, you kind of, stay in the hotel all day.
Yeah.
And then 4 hours before the game, you have your meal. And then 2 hours before the game, you get to the stadium and you do the Walk of Champions in front of everybody. And then probably take the field we used to take the field right away. The specials did just start running around and stuff. And then we come back in, get your pads on, and then you go out there with 45 minutes.
Right.
But you're kind of shelled into your hotel when you're at home or away.
Yeah.
So
I guess on a game day when you have to get ready, do you ever just when you hear the roar of the crowd when you're going out right before kickoff on just a pitch black 7:00 game SEC game? I bet that it's cool, right? It's chilling. It's got to be chilling. As a player.
For sure. It's something that you kind of grew up watching on TV, and then you're there, and so it's cool. And then they started doing the stadium lights, and then they started holding the phone flashlights up.
Yeah.
my third year there at Alabama. So
Okay.
that's when things kind of took off in the stadium. Mm-hmm.
So going up against a lot of high caliber SEC talent, you go up against LSU, Tennessee, Florida. What was probably the most difficult, I guess, team to go up against as a long snapper? I know nobody can line up in front of you, but as for coverage and stuff like.
So
I know that sounds like a dumb question, but
when I snapped punts, the hardest rush I ever faced was there was two, probably LSU. There was a guy at LSU, and then there was a guy at Tennessee, who I remembered. I remember when he put his hands on me once. If he really wanted to, he could just run me over right now.
Really?
And he just he rushed me once, and I got to the side of him, and then the rest of the game he was kind of just playing contain on me. So he wasn't rushing, but he was trying to keep me in my spot.
Right.
And it was my last game of my career, and I was just we're not just don't give up a punt right now. So I just remember, he had that leverage. He was he was probably 5'11", probably 245, and
Jeez.
just all muscle.
Mm-hmm. What I would do to have 3 or 4 more inches and some more muscle mass.
And that was I was 30 pounds ago too, so I was I was already 210.
Okay.
And so I was just scrawny and wasn't ready for it. So
just caught you off guard.
Yeah, a little bit.
So going on the road as an Alabama player, what was probably the coolest environment to play in? Was it Death Valley?
I never played at Death Valley.
Really?
So,
okay.
There's a couple. So I played Vanderbilt my last 2 years.
Right.
And so between Vanderbilt and Alabama, I didn't play at LSU. I didn't play at Georgia. I didn't play at Arkansas. And I didn't play at Missouri because of COVID.
Right.
So the coolest place I played was probably Texas A&M.
Really?
Mm-hmm.
College Station.
Yeah, I thought that was cool. I thought Florida was a little overrated. And I thought South Carolina was pretty cool.
Cool.
So those were probably my top 2.
Interesting. Tennessee didn't really.
It was okay. It was huge weather issues. There was 3 lightning delays, so it wasn't really packed. It was a night game. It was just weird. It was a weird environment.
Yeah. I've been in a situation like that in high school football, not college football, but in high school football we played, basically the high school I went to was our big rival, and we haven't beaten them since 98, basically, and still haven't beaten them since. But that'll change, I hope. That'll change. We had a giant lightning delay, probably 4 or 5 hours, and then we didn't end up resuming play until I think 11:30. And then there was another lightning delay, and they said, no, we're just going to play it on Saturday. So we had to come back the next day.
Do it again.
I think the opposing team, they were from out of town. I take it back. It was not the rivalry team. It was I think a warm-up game, kind of one of the cupcake games. And they came from out of town, and they just slept in our wrestling room for overnight. And I was like, wow. They had it rough. And I was we were beating them, I think 30-7 or 30-14 something. So it was well out of reach, but they didn't want to give up. It was
crazy.
When it's so far in the game you can concede.
Yeah.
They said, no, we're not going to concede. I was wow, just come on, we got stuff to do on a Saturday.
Goodness gracious.
You know what I mean?
That's awful.
But yeah, that's kind of I can relate to that what you were saying with the weird environment. But you mentioned playing at Vanderbilt last 2 seasons. What kind of a transition was that for you? Was it a good transition? A difficult transition, bad transition? What was it for you?
So at first it was probably a little difficult. It was my 4th year of college, so all my friends were seniors at Alabama still. And then, you move to this big town, not knowing anybody. And then you get to that locker room, everybody's kind of already known each other for a few years. So a little different. And then I was in grad school, and a lot of my peers were in undergrad. So I had class at night, and then they had class during the day. So schedules never matched. But after a couple months in Nashville, it just clicked and it was fine.
Yeah.
And I met some of my best friends ever at Vanderbilt too. So
that's pretty cool.
Yeah. So it was a good transition. But
yeah. We talked about it, previously before the podcast that, going from Tuscaloosa, that's a very football centric, very college style lifestyle. And you go to Nashville where it's kind of a mixture of everything. It's like a giant circus of, Metro City and all this craziness. To you, was that a big, not culture shock, but was it kind of a shock to you? Just dang, don't have that college experience anymore. It's like I'm at Vanderbilt, I'm in a city. Like,
yeah, it was just different. But there's also, being I guess in your fourth year of college, you kind of realize there's a lot of job opportunities here and a lot of internship opportunities. So it was kind of, you feel more grown up being in Nashville than you do in Tuscaloosa.
right.
And like looking back at it is probably the better place to be when you're 21, 22.
Yeah, that's true. That's true. So when you had conversations at Alabama with coaches, like obviously you learned a lot because we've talked before, from your high school days all the way through college, there was a good lineage of players that went D1, played at the next level. So going from Alabama to Vanderbilt, was it a bit of a like transition where like coaches were coming up to you asking for advice, or were you kind of still the, I guess, student to the teacher?
Yeah, I mean, well, you're always a student to the teacher.
Yeah.
But I had one coach who, he wasn't my position coach, but he was a defensive coach. He came up after practice once and asked me kind of the difference, at least from my perspective. But then again, I was just a player, so I don't really know why they implemented some of the things they did or how we did some, So I kind of just gave him my perspective on it. So the players would ask me a bunch in the locker room, kind of. And there's always stories to be told, so
Yeah.
I always told stories about stuff that happened and people that happened.
So when you were at Vanderbilt, I believe Derek Mason was the head coach, correct?
Yeah.
So comparing Derek Mason to Nick Saban, what are some big takeaways from being at Alabama that are also big takeaways from being at Vanderbilt at that time? If that's,
Like, what's the difference?
yeah, basically.
I think Coach Mason was probably more of a player's coach, for sure. There's two types of coaching styles, and I think they both work. I don't think like the reason that we didn't maybe do as well was because of him, but it was just, I guess, it was two separate ways of thinking. Everything was the opposite. So like, Coach Mason was always very approachable. Coach Saban, not as approachable. You had to schedule something.
Yeah, very stern.
Yeah, at Vanderbilt we practiced in the mornings, and then at Alabama we practiced in the afternoons. So that's really it. I would say maybe the coaching staff at Vanderbilt was a little younger.
Okay.
Alabama, the coaches had to dress like they were going to an office job. So like slacks,
very
collared
professional.
shirts. Yes. So like you didn't wear what you wore to practice to the office. So that was another difference.
Was that kind of like the same standard for players as well? Like
no,
not at all.
No,
They just kind of wore sweats.
Yeah, you wear whatever.
Okay.
I will say though, like at Alabama when we traveled, we always wore suits. Even like on the Friday to the plane, and then at Vanderbilt we wore suits on Saturdays, like right before the game. But that was it. Like for travel, we didn't have to, which was pretty nice. But
what did you prefer, a player's coach or that more stern style coaching?
For me, I don't know. For me, it doesn't really matter. Maybe.
Yeah.
I mean, I had great experience with both. It wasn't like
there's no bad in this. That's
no. It wasn't too harsh at all. Like when you don't have a player's coach. Because kind of as long as there's those boundaries and you kind of know what to expect. Like when you expect it, it's fine.
Yeah.
So I don't know. Probably,
it's to anybody's preference. Yeah. I don't know. I like a player's coach. I think it's pretty cool. I think, when you have a coach that, thinks that, not that you're their friend. It's not that. It's just the fact that they make things more relatable. Right. And like you're able to see on their level. And yet you're still the student to the teacher. You're still able to learn, and I kind of like that. James Franklin, when he was at Vanderbilt, that's what he was, player's coach, and like his success was good. And people keep comparing those Vanderbilt days to when he was there. Like, will Vandy ever get back to that status? But like, I think they could. I think they still can.
Oh yeah,
I think under Clark Lee, they've been phenomenal.
Yeah, they had a great year this year.
Yeah.
So I mean, I don't see why not. They're starting to put a lot more money in athletics. I think that's where it starts. They're building a separate indoor facility compared to the one that they had recently for all the other sports, redoing the stadium. And they're really integrating Nashville a lot more, which I think is going to help a lot.
Yeah,
so
I agree. You know, being a Nashville kid through and through, it's weird because I tell people, I'm like, hey, stop moving to Nashville. I'd appreciate it. Traffic's getting worse. I mean, you grew up in Georgia, so like you understand the traffic of Atlanta and such, but like in Nashville, I remember I was a kid, it always took me about 15, 20 minutes to get to school. Now, like if I were to go back to my grade school from today, then it takes easy 30, 40 minutes. And it's a 15, 20-minute drive.
Right.
Like the only way it can be that time is like 11 o'clock at night, you know?
Yeah.
But no, I think Nashville's a cool place and it's evolving, and I think it's for the betterment of situations like that with Vanderbilt where they can, you know, build a new facility and kind of keep expanding and having, you know, the players grow as human beings and in the sport as well. But, you know, enough about Bama and Vandy, more about you. You know, you're done with the college career, but yet you're still training. You're still trying to get to the top level. And, you know, we talked beforehand about, you know, your trainer, and he gives you a lot of advice. You want to talk a little bit more about him?
So, no, I have a trainer. His name's Justin Todd. He trains other snappers too. And I work out with another snapper his name's Matt Overton. He was with the Cowboys last year. So, between them two, kind of rely on them a lot for getting in shape, staying in shape, and then kind of just the mindset part of it where, you know, you're always ready, but you're trying to stay kind of loose with it. So
exactly. Is there anything that, you know, Matt Overton's kind of told you from the professional spectrum of the NFL to now? Like, you still getting to that point, like what advice has he given you to keep on working?
Just to keep going and just try to find the flaws and fix them. It took him 6 years, and he's one of those guys that every other snapper kind of looks up to for that, because, you know, there's like Zach Triner with the Bucks. It took him 4 years, and I was talking to him about his journey, and he's like, "Yeah, Overton's a guy that I looked up to." I was like, "Huh, funny you say that."
He's in my contacts list.
And there's like a few others that same thing.
Wow.
That they always kind of reached out to him about it. So
he seems to be the godfather of long snappers. It was what it sounds like, the story of it all. But that's pretty cool. So, like, besides Matt Overton, did you have anybody that you kind of idolized growing up?
The only other probably long snapper I looked up to was maybe Josh Harris. He was with the Falcons when I was kind of starting and when I was going through it. He's with the Chargers now, like as of this year. He just spent 10 years with the Falcons. And it was cool because I got to meet him over COVID and start snapping with him a little bit over COVID. So it kind of just made everything come full circle.
Yeah.
So besides that, though, not really. You know, I can name you, every guy on every team and like watch all of them, but there's not a specific person. I'm left-handed, and most of them are right-handed, so it's kind of there's not like a specific person I've just like idolized. Also, when I got into this, I was like a lot older. So like when you're a kid, you idolize like
all the positions.
Being from Atlanta, like Chipper Jones or like Joe Johnson, but you know when you're like in high school, it's just different.
Yeah, exactly. You grew up a big baseball fan? Yeah.
Oh yeah.
So big Braves through and through.
Yeah, huge Braves fan.
How was that World Series run for you? Pretty good.
It was awesome. Yeah.
Wild
yeah. I mean, it's something I'll never forget. That's for sure.
So what do you think about Dansby leaving? It's all right. You okay with it?
Yeah. I mean, it was kind of expected. You can't keep them all, I guess.
You got Vaughn Grissom just sitting on deck there.
Yeah. So he's ready to roll. I don't know. I'm expecting a big year this year. Again,
big year.
So we'll see.
Always love to hear it. I'm a Cardinals fan, so like. There's always a big expectation.
Right.
You need pitching.
Yeah.
Always need pitching.
Yeah.
But yeah, so on the last segment of the podcast, I hate to just be all jumbled up, but it's called Meals on Meatball.
Okay.
2 lists: Tennessee Tasties, Nashville Nasties. Now, I get it. You've traveled quite a bit all over the place with Alabama. Tuscaloosa is a big college town. Obviously, college towns have a lot of really good food, a lot of good hole-in-the-wall places. I'll put that on the celebrities list. There's a little celebrities list on Tennessee Tasties. So give me the 3 best places you've eaten in the Tennessee-Nashville area, and then a Nashville Nasties is just like a bad story you've had with food.
So, number 1 is Del Frisco's. Best place ever. They have like this Philly cheesesteak egg roll appetizer.
Yes, I've had that.
Fire.
Primo.
Number 2 is gonna be Midnight Oil.
Okay.
It's a pizza place next to my house. They have Pizza of the Month that I just recently found out about. Been going there for the last 6 months. Didn't know that, and it's like really good. Then number 3, I'm gonna go with Ninky. I like Ninky a lot. It's a hibachi place.
Okay.
Over like Bellevue area.
Okay. Yeah.
It's kind of just like in a shopping center, but it's really good.
Interesting. I don't think I've ever been there.
Yeah. I mean, it's not. I know it's not a chain. I'll tell you that.
Yeah.
So,
it's definitely family owned or something.
Yeah, for sure.
So what do you normally get there? Something just.
It's like chicken fried rice or like the chicken hibachi or something like that with like sushi. Yeah.
Okay.
That's good.
You a big sushi guy? No.
I mean, I don't like fish, so like any sushi like that doesn't have fish.
It's valid.
Yeah.
There's a way to make sushi not sushi.
Exactly. Yeah. Basically, like shrimp or like California rolls, stuff like that.
Yeah. All right. Well, let's get into the Tuscaloosa area. Give me that celebrity go-to spot in Tuscaloosa.
This place called Hooligans. I used to eat there a lot.
Okay.
Just like for lunch. They had like this chicken wrap with like honey mustard. It was just so good.
Really?
I used to eat there a lot. Probably a couple times a week.
Interesting. That's how you got bulked up, right?
Yeah. But yeah.
Interesting. All right, give me a Nashville nasty. I know you got one, Scott. Don't hold it back. It's full throttle. Give it to me.
I don't really have one. I have one. I mean, it's a national chain now, but Pita Pit.
Okay.
So I used to eat there when I was in Tuscaloosa, and I used to eat there a lot. And my girlfriend at the time got food poisoning, and so she stopped eating there, but like I still went. And then eventually I got food poisoning from them, and I could never eat it again.
That's strike number 3 right there.
That's my Nashville
Interesting.
World nasty. Yeah.
It's going to sound crazy, but my nasty is Chipotle. I know it sounds insane.
Wow.
People are just like, oh my God, shun this guy from the face of the earth.
Yeah, that's bold.
But it must be a spice in their food or something, because we were on a vacation one year, my brother and I with our family, and he ended up getting like a steak bowl or something. Mm-hmm. And I don't know if it was like a spice it was a grilled chicken roll or bowl, whatever. He got grilled chicken. He started eating it, and I was like, telling you, all right. He goes, what do you mean? He goes, it's starting to break out in like a rash, like all over his body. Like it looked like he got sunburnt. It was like on his arm, on his leg. I mean, everywhere.
Yeah.
And ended up getting some Benadryl and stuff. It took like 2-3 days to go away.
Goodness gracious.
But it must have been like some food allergy. But
yeah.
I ended up having the same reaction. I was like, all right, something's going on here.
Yeah.
It must be in the food.
It'll always ruin you.
Yeah. So I to this day, it's been about 4 or 5 years, haven't eaten at Chipotle.
Wow.
I've had their chips and guac. Now, I will say that stays okay, but I have not had any of their meats, rice, any of it. It's no bueno for me.
I might eat Chipotle after this. We'll see.
I mean, you can't go wrong, though, with the cheese and the sour cream.
Right.
It's fire. It's gas.
Yeah.
I mean, you can't go wrong with it, man. But, Scott, greatly appreciate you coming on the podcast, man.
Yeah, anytime.
Anything you want to say to the viewers and listeners? Anything you want to keep them in notice for?
Just keep watching Nick. That's it. That's all I got for you.
Okay, man. Well, hey, appreciate you, Scott.
Yeah, anytime.
Ladies and gentlemen, you can check out the Nick Frazier Podcast on YouTube now. It's video platform. You can check it out on Spotify, Apple, Google, Amazon Music now, and also iHeartRadio. So you can check them out on all those platforms, and we'll see you on the next episode. Peace.